What happens when ICE agents and gas masks turn a suburban Chicago street into a war zone and the collateral damage snowballs into violent protests?
Yes, so right now they're chanting, save your soul and quit your job. They have gas masks on. You got pepper balls going, tear canisters going, you got people on the roof. Okay, so right now things are escalating as we're watching this as vehicles coming out.
This isn't Portland 2020. This isn't wartime either. This is Chicago, September 2025, and Trump's crackdown is colliding with sanctuary protections in real time, with unprecedented consequences. So let's break down the gang arrests, the grieving father whose daughter was murdered by an illegal immigrant, and the violent turn no one in Illinois saw coming. Friday night, Broadview, Illinois. A boarded-up ICE facility looks more like a fortress than a processing center. Outside, hundreds of protesters crowd the gates, yelling at every car that tries to leave.
The ICE processing center there, protesters have been gathering for the last several hours. Organizers say they plan to demonstrate weekly at this boarded-up ICE facility as long as President Trump's Chicago crime crackdown continues.
Then, the screams get even louder when vans carrying detainees roll out. Some protesters pound the windows, others block the driveway, and that's when DHS makes its move.
Then you can hear in the loudspeaker a dispersal order from DHS saying that what these individuals are doing are violating federal law, calling for them to disperse, saying that they will use less lethal munitions if they need to. So that is something that we expect to see here because this continues to grow.
Seconds later, canisters pop. Thick white gas rolls across the crowd. Agents in helmets and gas masks pour out of the gate. Border Patrol's tactical arm is suddenly smashing through suburban Chicago. By the way, that's the same unit used at the border.
That is the kind of elite SWAT arm of Border Patrol. They have gas masks on. You got pepper balls going, tear canisters going, you got people on the roof. Okay, so right now things are escalating.
The scene escalates quickly. Protesters are coughing, sprinting in every direction, or struggling to film. One man scrambles on top of a moving ICE vehicle, trying to block its path.
There is a man sitting on top of the hood of this moving vehicle. Come on, Ryan, let's go. So we're gonna walk in a little bit here, you guys. This is getting really, really heated. You got a lot of tear gas and a lot of pepper balls being sprayed right now.
ICE agents swarm the man within seconds. The situation snowballs even further. The more the agents grab him, the more the protesters scream. Cameras catch officers dragging bodies off the street as tear gas fills the air.
This vehicle just made its way free. You can hear everyone shouting. Obviously, you have tear canisters on the ground.
This wasn't a one-off clash. Organizers now promise to show up every day at this ICE facility for as long as Trump's Chicago crime crackdown keeps going. The message from protesters is clear. They see ICE raids as an attack on their neighbors. The message from DHS is even clearer. Resistance will be crushed with brute force.
Feel free to protest, don't interfere.
By the time the tear gas settled in Broadview, everyone knew things weren't calming down. They were about to get worse. The same week, cameras caught the moment a woman confronted ICE officers head-on.
Around 4:15 local time this afternoon, ICE agents were on the roof when a woman approached the fence along with a few other protesters and started yelling at them.
Agents fired pepper balls down at her. She refused to back off, and seconds later, the clash spiraled into a viral clip that's been replayed across the internet ever since.
She was thrown onto the ground, and as agents crossed the street, moving protesters further away, that woman reached up and grabbed the mask of one of the ICE agents.
5 people were arrested that day, and reporters said ambulances had to be called to the scene. In one clip, you see the woman flashing a peace sign, even as she's dragged away in a headlock.
That's when another one put her in a headlock, and you can see on video there that she flashes a peace sign.
Lawyers on the ground confirmed that some of the people detained were quickly cited and released, but the images of bodies being thrown onto asphalt told a different story. Protesters shouted that sanctuary means safety. ICE insisted that sanctuary means lawlessness, and that these protesters are only standing in the way of their job, which is to crack down on actual criminals. What happened next sealed the moment as a turning point. It wasn't just protesters versus ICE anymore. Chicago politicians started jumping directly into the fight, which gave the whole thing a national spotlight. Illinois State Senator Karina Villa didn't stand back and watch. She walked right up to ICE officers in her district, telling them this was her community, not theirs.
This is my city, that's right! Take off your mask!
Her confrontation went viral instantly. Clips showed her standing between buses and ICE vans, shouting instructions to families to stay inside their cars and not open their doors. Border Patrol leadership mocked her afterward, saying she needs help, basically calling her crazy for trying to block a federal operation. But Villa didn't back down. She framed the raids not as law enforcement, but as a direct attack on the people she represents.
Right now, it is not safe to be brown. Right now, it is not safe to be black. Right now, it is not safe to speak up and speak out. But we cannot stay hidden and fearful.
And she wasn't alone. Chicago's own mayor, Brandon Johnson, slammed Trump's threats to deploy the National Guard, saying he wanted to occupy our city and break our Constitution. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker called it a wannabe dictator move and vowed the state wouldn't be intimidated. Across the country, mayors in cities like Los Angeles and New York have echoed the same line, insisting sanctuary cities have the right to protect immigrant communities from what they see as federal overreach. But just like protesters, mayors and senators pushing back only makes Trump hit harder. Retired Border Patrol Chief Chris Clem said,
You know, this is, when I see these protesters and this particular playing out in Chicago, it reminds me of a quote from Martin Luther King about the dangers of sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity.
This is what happened hours after Villa's protests. Another shocking image started circulating online. Federal agents and local cops surrounding a Chicago house with rifles pointed at the door. The claim was blunt. Inside that home was a suspected MS-13 gang member who had been living freely in the city. You can see the standoff play out. A line of officers crouched behind shields, others aiming directly at the windows, waiting for someone to step outside. And according to DHS, this wasn't some small-time offender either. This was the exact type of transnational criminal that sanctuary policies allowed to stay under the radar. To Trump, this was the proof he needed. The message from the White House was that sanctuary cities don't just protect working families, they protect violent gangs. And if Chicago won't handle it, ICE will.
The people that are wanting to protect migrant populations, they're actually, creating an environment that is further exploiting human beings. And this is ridiculous. They don't know what they're protesting. And I'm so proud of this administration cracking down on these violent criminals and these public safety threats.
Supporters point to this raid as evidence that Operation Midway Blitz is doing exactly what it promised, hunting down the worst offenders and smashing through local protections to do it. But in Chicago, that same footage landed differently. To protesters, it looked like a military occupation happening next to schools and churches and making people feel constantly unsafe. How you see it depends entirely on which side of the barricade you stand. Here's where it gets really dark. The emotional punch of Operation Midway Blitz comes from the stories that DHS puts forward as justification. In Chicago, one family's pain has been turned into the face of the crackdown.
The Department of Homeland Security says Operation Midway Blitz is honoring a local woman. Katie Abraham of Glenview was killed in a drunk driving crash involving a Guatemalan immigrant.
Katie's not the only one that this happened to, and nor will she unfortunately be the last one, right? So I think we need to have some real leadership.
Katie Abraham was 20 years old when she was killed in a drunk driving crash involving a Guatemalan immigrant who federal agents later caught fleeing to Mexico. Her father, Joe Abraham, says he never got support from Illinois politicians, but Trump himself held up Katie's photo and promised to clean things up.
Let's honor Katie and the fact that hopefully no other children will have to go through this Russian roulette that our state is playing.
For Joe, it's not about his political views, but about doing what's right for his daughter.
Say what you want about Donald Trump. He at least acknowledged me, looked me in the eye, said we're going to clean things up.
Abraham's family sees sanctuary cities as the reason their daughter's killer was on the road that night, and DHS has leaned hard on their tragedy, naming Katie as a symbol of why these raids are happening. But here's the question no one can avoid. Does one family's heartbreak justify the chaos now unfolding across Chicago? Because for every Katie Abraham, there are also children watching their parents dragged into vans. And the real twist is this: even families trying to follow the rules and get answers are being pulled into the crossfire.
Early this morning, multiple vans could be seen coming in and out of the Broadview Processing Center as approximately a dozen protesters stood outside the facility. This comes after days of clashes between demonstrators and federal agents.
Outside the Broadview ICE processing center, it isn't just protesters and federal agents clashing. It's also the families of those detained by ICE and taken to unknown detention centers. Some have had their phones confiscated, and they haven't been able to get in touch with their loved ones for days or weeks. Some family members say the protests are making the chaos worse.
The big challenges, like with the protesters attacking ICE, is what I have closed the doors for lawyers, closed the door for families, closed the doors for ministers, for chaplains like me.
That was Anna Nikolic, a chaplain who says she's been outside the facility every day trying to help families navigate the chaos. She insists she's not on either side. But when protesters block entrances, ICE shuts everything down, and families who need updates can't get them. Meanwhile, DHS is doubling down. Secretary Noem's message to rioters is clear: you will not stop us or slow us down. ICE will continue to enforce the law. According to the federal report this last weekend, 16 protesters were arrested outside Broadview in just 3 days. Some were cited and released, others face federal charges. And amid the arrests, rumors started to spread. Would DHS close Broadview completely and move operations to another location? Local outlets reported possible relocation, but DHS issued denials. The uncertainty only fueled more speculation. Were the protests working, or were they actually backfiring, forcing ICE to dig in even harder? Broadview is now a symbol of Trump's Operation Midway Blitz, an operation DHS says is targeting undocumented immigrants with criminal offenses who fled to Chicago because they knew sanctuary policies would protect them. But here's one final twist that makes this operation even more controversial. For many, the operation became unbearable after the death of Silverio Villegas Gonzalez. He wasn't a protester. He wasn't even accused of gang activity. He was a father with sole custody of his 2 children. But when ICE agents confronted him, he tried to leave in his car. He never made it home.
Breaking news, a man is dead and an ICE agent seriously hurt after an immigration arrest ended in gunfire in Franklin Park.
State Senator Karina Villa called it out immediately.
The death of Silverio Villegas Gonzalez was a travesty. He left 2 young children that he was raising behind.
She said his killing marked a line in the sand, a point where the raids had gone from enforcement to something far more dangerous. For her, it wasn't about whether Gonzalez had resisted arrest or not. It was about the fact that a man raising 2 kids alone was now dead, and the only answer anyone could give was that he ran and made an ICE agent feel threatened. Anchor Maria Hinojosa echoed her feelings on live TV. She reminded people that Gonzalez wasn't the first to die in these kinds of raids.
This is a line in the sand that has been crossed. 2 people died in California over ICE raids. 1 ran into traffic, the other fell off a roof. This was a man running who was shot. So let's be very clear. A line in the sand has been crossed, and Silverio, sadly, will not be the only one.
That warning came out a couple of days ago, but the protests are far from stopping, and so is ICE. Now comes the bigger question. What happens if this keeps escalating? Trump has already threatened to send the National Guard into Chicago, saying the city is about to find out why it's called the Department of War. Local officials are openly defying him, calling his threats unconstitutional and dictatorial. DHS says they won't stop, no matter how many protesters surround their facilities.
Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker saying the President of the United States is threatening to go to war with an American city. This is not a joke. This is not normal. Donald Trump is not a strong man. He's a scared man. Illinois won't be intimidated by a wannabe dictator.
Chicago's Mayor Brandon Johnson says the city will not be occupied, but the raids are happening anyway. Vans keep rolling out of Broadview, and protesters keep showing up every night to block them. The fight has become bigger than one city. Los Angeles, New York, and other sanctuary cities are watching Chicago closely, bracing for their turn as Operation Midway Blitz expands. For Trump supporters, every arrest is a win, proof that the sanctuary shield is finally being smashed. For critics, every tear gas canister and every fatal shooting is proof that the country is on the edge of authoritarianism. The real cliffhanger is whether this ends in retreat or in a full-blown confrontation between feds and local governments. Because right now, both sides are digging in and nobody is backing down. So here's the question hanging over Chicago, and maybe the whole country. Will ICE keep smashing sanctuary walls until no city can resist? Or will Chicago become ground zero for a revolt that spreads nationwide? And if Trump really does bring in the National Guard, what happens when soldiers, not just ICE agents, are standing at the gates of Broadview? This whole thing might just snowball to a point of no return.